We're back at the First and Short podcast with JJ and the Goose. I'm the Goose, and today we're talking about the Florida State University and the possibility that they may be back. And by back, I mean dominating the ACC, making every other team ball up in the fetal position, and marching to BCS national championship games on the regular like they did back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So JJ, is this for real?
Well, we don't have a proven track record from Jimbo Fisher yet, so I would proceed with caution on saying Florida State is back, because it's always the question, and so far the answer has been no over the last few years. But you have to think they just got their toughest test out of the way by beating Clemson. And it shows you the kind of respect people had for Florida State that by saying that they were a 14-point favorite over Clemson, who was a top 10 team. So
wait. Clemson top 10 team? We all knew that was just there as a marker. I don't think anyone actually expects Clemson to finish.
Hey, game day was there. They thought Clemson had a shot. That's all I'm saying. But like I'm saying, they only have one ranked team left on the schedule. It's Florida at the end of the year, and it's at home. So, and you know that Will Muschamp and the Gators would love to trip up Jimbo Fisher. But I just don't see it happening. I actually think Florida State, I do think they'll lose a game. Well, let me put that out there right now. Can I tell you which one? Absolutely not, because it's the ACC, and that's how things work. Chances are it could be Lane Stadium on a Thursday night game against Virginia Tech. Teams don't usually go in there and have great success. Let's put that out there.
Well, you said there's only one ranked team on their schedule. I'm going to give Virginia Tech the benefit of the doubt and say they're going to get their season on track, and by the time they play Florida State, which isn't until November 8th, they will in fact be ranked. Although I think Virginia Tech is a bit of a fraud. I mean, they, in my opinion, should have lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Pittsburgh. I don't think they're that good. The Florida game is intriguing, although they get it at home. But going back to the Clemson game, I was kind of impressed and disappointed at the same time. I expected Florida State to win that game handily, and was very surprised that Clemson came out and led for a good portion of that game. And the part that really disappointed me was the defense. I thought the defense was the strength of this team, and they go and give up 37 points. Although they did a wonderful job at the end of getting it together and shutting down Clemson. But, man, this offense is just incredible. E.J. Manuel, he might be a Heisman candidate. He keeps playing like this. This guy's throwing 73% completion. He's got 900 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. And he's also ran the ball for 188 yards and a score. And on the ground, Chris Thompson and James Wilder Jr. are tearing shit up. Chris Thompson, 357 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had a 75 and an 80-yard run a couple weeks ago against Wake Forest. Wilder's got 6 touchdowns. And even Lonnie Pryor has got 4 rushing touchdowns. Deborah Smiley's got 3 rushing touchdowns. That's insane. I mean, no one is stopping them on the ground so far. Again, granted, they played 2 of their games came against Murray State and Savannah State. But Wake Forest and Clemson are both FBS opponents. And Clemson is a good team. Again, I don't think a top 10 team, but a good team. And they ran all over them. And in the second half, when the game was on the line, they really ran away with it pretty handily. I mean, it was 12 points, and it was close for most of it, but the fourth quarter was not close. It was Florida State being the Florida State of old. I do expect them to run through the ACC. I think they might lose to Florida, might lose to Virginia Tech. I don't think, one of these minor, mid-row ACC teams are going to beat them like they have in the past, 5 or 6 years. I think this team is for real. Now, say they do run the table and do get a national title game against an Alabama, an LSU, an Oregon, do you think this team can win a national championship and redeem the ACC, which has been so pitiful in BCS games and the national championship games that they have gotten into? I mean, Florida State is only 1-2 in their 3 BCS championship opponents, and they're the only team to make it there. So if they did make it, JJ, do you think this team could match up against a Bama, LSU, Oregon type?
No, I really don't think they could, actually. Well, let's eliminate one of those right now. LSU did not look good on Saturday. Could they turn around? Yeah, could it have been a fluke? I was completely unimpressed with LSU. Oregon, I don't think Florida State could stop Oregon's offense. Oregon's offense has always been what drives that team, with the defense slowly behind it. People just doubt too much, and they end up winning something big. I just don't see Florida State being able to line up with E.J. Manuel and punching a team like Alabama in the mouth. I just don't think they could do it. I do not think they can move the ball real easily on an Alabama. And I also don't know that Jimbo Fisher could make adjustments on the fly to keep up with Nick Saban. We saw on Saturday Jimbo Fisher was able to outcoach Dabo Swinney, and we saw it coming out of the half as things started to get a little bit rough for Florida State. We saw him make adjustments, and Dabo Swinney did not keep up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the Oregon comment, I think, is right on the mark. I mean, you saw what Sammy Watkins did to the Florida State defense. I mean, Oregon is chock full of Sammy Watkins. They have Sammy Watkins coming off trees. They got so many Sammy Watkins, they don't know what to do with all the Sammy Watkins they have on the Oregon team. And Alabama, man, I look at that team and I think, is there a better program in the country? I mean, they just won the national championship. They have X amount of first-round draft picks, and they're coming back just beating the snot out of teams. They're so proficient. On defense, they just beat the tar out of teams, and on offense, they're just like an unstoppable machine. They don't even do anything that looks that impressive. They don't look that fast. They don't even look like they're trying that hard, but they just keep moving forward, first down after first down, getting scoring possession after scoring possession. Nick Saban is a mad scientist. I mean, this guy, they should probably ban him from the NCAA. I mean, I look at the next decade and I think, why can't Alabama win 5 of those national titles? It doesn't seem bizarre to me. And I know LSU had a bad game against Auburn, but I'm willing to chalk that up to the SEC. The SEC is the SEC, and every week it can be tough, even though Alabama's making it look so easy. And I think that LSU is really the only program I think that's got the horses to run physically with Bama. But no, I absolutely agree with you. I think if Florida State does run the table and makes it to a national title, they're not going to be able to hang. Which brings me to the point of the ACC and how badly they need the Seminoles to have a big season and to win. Did you know that University of Kansas and the ACC have just as many BCS wins since 2002? Did you know that? True fact.
Sadly, I did know that. Yeah.
They are desperate for a team to come out and on a big stage, a BCS stage, validate this conference. I mean, they thought with getting Miami and Virginia Tech that they were doing that, and it just hasn't worked out. Miami's gone in the clunker. I mean, they're a mid-level, they're a mid-class SEC team, which is saying very little about themselves. Virginia Tech, the best case that you have for the ACC, always manages to make it to a BCS game and lose, except for that one time. And you've got Clemson, who last year made it and promptly gave up more points than any team has ever given up in a BCS game.
I think West Virginia is actually still scoring. I don't think we saw a final from that one.
Yeah,
I still think they're putting up points on Clemson right now as we speak.
An even better point, they got blown out by a team that people were arguing didn't deserve to be there. That's never good. Never good. So, I mean, I pray for Swofford and the ACC that Florida State not only runs the table, but they do something with it, and at least are competitive in a national championship game, even if they made it. Now, I mean,
yeah, I mean, it'd be hold on, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it would be a lot to ask for them to beat Alabama. But at the very least, in the fourth quarter, let's know that Florida State can still drive down the field and win this game.
Like, we're making another assumption that if Florida State goes undefeated, they'll automatically be in the national title game, which I think is a poor assumption.
I think, for one thing, we are definitely discounting West Virginia right now. If West Virginia and Florida State both go undefeated, who goes to play against the SEC champion?
Well, you got West Virginia, and what about Oregon? I mean, I think if Oregon goes undefeated, Oregon will play in the national championship no matter what. There's not a circumstance where Oregon go undefeated and not play.
No, and they'd have a win over USC in the process.
You win over USC, a win over Stanford, possibly 2 wins over USC. In fact, I mean, most likely they'll have to beat USC twice to go undefeated. And they've been there before. People have seen them on the BCS stage recently, and they've seen them almost beat Auburn, which I know the posters say, it's only about this season. I don't care about what they said. Your previous experience, your previous performance in the last couple of years, and what the general perception about your program matters. And Florida State, in the last 4 or 5 years, has been a dud. I mean, they haven't won the ACC since 2005, which is a real embarrassment, and they haven't, they didn't win that BCS game, so they haven't won a BCS game since back when Michael Vick played for Virginia Tech and they beat them in the national championship. So if they do make it to a BCS game, which I'm sure they will, and even better if they make the national championship, it's going to be a huge stage for not only for them to announce that they're back, but that the ACC is a player once again in the national discussion, which they have sorely been lacking in the last decade.
Well, I think for the ACC's reputation, it'd be huge because if Florida State goes to the national championship, there's a chance Clemson gets to a BCS game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even if Florida State doesn't go to a national championship game, we saw the ACC get 2 BCS teams last year, and Virginia Tech was going to... They should have won that game against Michigan in the Sugar Bowl. They should have won that game. But they probably shouldn't have been there.
As I say, my counter-argument is because of the rules that are awful, Virginia Tech both Virginia Tech and Michigan had no business. I mean, in Virginia Tech's defense, they were playing a team that also didn't deserve to be there. What I consider to be the worst BCS game ever. But rules are rules. You can overlook a really good Boise State team with 1 loss, and you can overlook, Arkansas because they happen to play in the same conference as the 2 teams that played the national championship game, and their only losses are to those 2 teams. But hey, rules are rules, and it's all about, and as college football has told us, it's all about making money. It's not about putting the teams that are most deserving in a position to show off their talents. It's about making money and selling tickets. So we got to see Virginia Tech lose to Michigan, just like all ACC teams do in BCS bowl games. They lose.
While we're talking about making money and a little bit of the ACC, we're discounting Notre Dame. There's a chance they sneak in there.
Well, do we consider? I mean, can we consider?
No. I'm not considering them for the ACC, but I'm saying there's a chance they go undefeated.
Oh, let's
be honest. There's a chance they do that.
I will say this: I'm a big right with Florida State. Notre Dame is a number 1 offender of mine as far as teams that are hyped up every year and overranked, only to prove what we all know, that they're past their prime and their programs that are no longer relevant. But you got to be impressed by Chip Kelly and Notre Dame this year. They held Denard Robinson to a squat. Was it 6 points? I mean, that defense is nasty, and you know what they say, defense wins championships. I don't know. So, but they got a tough schedule. They still have to play USC, still have to play Stanford. But yeah, I mean, if they can get that whole quarterback situation, ironed out, that's definitely another team. And I haven't seen West Virginia play, so I shouldn't make comments about it. But people are going nuts about this guy, Geno Smith.
Geno Smith. I will tell you right now, I think Geno Smith wins the Heisman. I literally think he wins the Heisman. He's the most exciting player in college football that nobody is watching.
That's what I hear. And see, if you got 4 or 5 undefeated teams, which is a possible case in college football,
which is a BCS nightmare.
Well, it happened a few years ago. Tim Tebow's here. But there's no way Florida State makes the national championship. Now, there's a chance they play a BCS game against another undefeated team or a very highly ranked 1-loss team. I mean, you assume that would be the case. And in which case, I think it might even be better for Florida State, because I'm assuming whoever plays the national championship will have to play Auburn, Alabama, which is bad news for them. But if Florida State can play a West Virginia, or they can play a Notre Dame, and they can win, I think that it might serve Florida State better than getting thrashed by Alabama in the national championship, because it does announce that they're back, that they can win big-time games, and hopefully it will set up that team in the future for recruiting again at the highest of levels. Although
they ain't having any trouble recruiting down in Tallahassee.
Yeah,
there is no trouble recruiting. And you know what? If Florida State runs the table and doesn't get in, you gotta feel a little bit sorry for them, because the only reason they played Murray State and Savannah State is because West Virginia backed out at the last second.
Don't you hate that?
Dude, that should have been what we could be considering the game of the year here. That could have been. Instead, Michigan and Alabama was tabbed the game of the year at the beginning of the season. It's just really sad.
If Oregon loses, Notre Dame loses, you got 3 undefeateds, and Florida State and West Virginia are the other 2, and Alabama's, the shoe-in, I think you have to give it to Florida State based on that alone. Call it the push penalty. I mean,
I like it.
I really think it really annoys me when teams back out the last minute. I mean, if you remember Michigan, the only reason they were playing App State is because Oregon backed out. These teams figure out, we've got a pretty good team. oh, but we scheduled another really good team. God forbid, a good team like West Virginia go and play another really good team like Florida State and test themselves. Instead, they'd rather play a Joe Schmo nobody, get another win, and increase their chances of going to a BCS or national championship game because because they don't have to possibly lose to a Florida State. It's ridiculous. There's not enough scheduling in college football out of conference, and to allow these teams the last minute to back out, I think it's unfair. I mean, I really think that you have to pay a massive penalty, or just say you can't do it. Once you sign, hey, you're going to play us this year, you have to play. You have to show up and put your guys out there and let the field decide. I mean, for all we know, West Virginia wins. They're ranked number 2 in the country right now. They've got an inside track to playing in a national championship game, but instead we don't know. Maybe Florida State and West Virginia are playing the Orange Bowl can figure it out.
Well, that's why we're so lucky to have a playoff coming soon. But, and you think about it, there's really only one conference where teams don't have to play anybody outside of the conference. The SEC. If Alabama played nobodies out of non-conference and then went undefeated, no one's going to question it. But until you've proven that you can be consistently one of the best teams in college football, if not the best in Alabama's case, over the last few years, then you need to get out and play people. And Florida State tried. They tried to get out and play people. They're going to play Florida at the end of the year, so at least they are going to get a top 15, if not a top 10 team on the schedule before the end of the season out of conference. But it does kind of suck because you're thinking about a non-conference schedule that had West Virginia and Florida on it. And even if it does have Murray State on there, of course, everybody does need a tune-up game. So
yeah, no, I don't disparage anybody for playing one AA team. But you get one AA team. There is no reason on God's green earth that any team like Florida State should be playing 2 AA teams. And I realize it's not Florida State's fault this year, but a lot of FBS teams do this. They pad the schedule with 2 FCS opponents, and it pisses me off. It's a waste of a week. It's a waste of a game. Why are we doing this? Play North Texas. That would make me feel better. Play San Diego State. Play Florida Atlantic. Don't play bumfuck, nobody. I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear about it, and it's unimpressive to me. It's a 0. I don't take anything that a team does when playing a AA team and apply it to what I think about them going forward. It means nothing to me.
Unless they struggle.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you struggle or lose, exactly. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to gain, everything to lose by playing a AA team, in my opinion. Unless you win by 21 points, it's half a loss as far as I'm concerned. I think that ought to be the rule. I think if you win by less than 21, you get half a loss. I bet they'd play less. I mean, in Florida State's case, it wouldn't be much of an issue. But for these other teams that schedule AA's every year, maybe they think twice about it because it's a waste. It's just dumb, and it's insulting. And if we're going to have a 12-game schedule where 2 teams are going to be non-competitive, let's just go back to having 11 games a season. We don't need a 12th game because it's obviously not being used. Instead of playing a nobody, why don't we get out and play somebody else? Because like you said, unless you play in the SEC and you're going to get 5 top 25 teams in conference just because of your conference schedule and probably a couple top 10 teams, time to find somebody out of conference. And for teams like West Virginia and Florida State that play in the Big East and the SEC, which are subpar BCS conference.
Oh, hey, hold up there, Goose. Hold up there, Goose. West Virginia's not in the Big East anymore.
Oh, excuse me, Big 12. Oh, God. Thank you. Don't you love conference realignment?
Yeah, I can't keep up with it.
Yeah. Well, Big 12 is a little better, but it's not much better. I mean, you've got Oklahoma and a rebuilding Texas right now. There's really not anybody else.
Kansas State.
They could use another top 10 team on their schedule. They could use another ranked opponent on their schedule.
Look at Florida State, though.
Yeah, no. Can you blame Florida State? Can you put this one on Florida State? No.
No, no, you can't. And then if you also think about it, if Virginia Tech doesn't lose to Pitt, you're looking at a top 15 team there. Miami should be better every year. They really should. There's no excuse that they're not a top 25 team. They should be insulted that they finish just in the top 25. Miami should be better than that. So if you think about it, the ACC really should be better than it is with the programs it's got.
Oh, I agree with you.
The ACC, if they knew when they brought in Virginia Tech and Miami, that Virginia Tech and Miami would be as good as they are now, I think they would have thought twice about doing it.
Well, don't put all that. Don't you wish that even on Virginia Tech? I think Virginia Tech has done what you could expect Virginia Tech to be. I think you could say definitively they are a top 15 program, and by top 15 I mean a lot closer to 15 than anywhere else on that list. But they are a good program. They have succeeded. I mean, they have dominated the ACC since they've come in. They've definitely underperformed in the BCS bowl bids, but by the ACC championship and the ACC regular season, they're the best of the tards. They're they're the best the ACC has. So we can, by proxy, assume that if Virginia Tech's underperforming in BCS games, so is the rest of the conference. And oh, by the way, when the rest of the conference has represented the ACC, they haven't won any. Virginia Tech at least has won one BCS game.
Yeah.
Florida State lost to Penn State. Clemson lost to West Virginia. Wake Forest lost to Louisville. No one else has done anything. So the team that's really underperformed is Miami.
That's who my comment was really focused.
Yeah, and I like what Miami's doing. This season they're really young, but I do think next 2 or 3 years you're going to see them make some more noise. But I mean, along with Miami, obviously Florida State has been the other underachieving team. I mean, if you compare them, 2 decades ago, the 90s, a good argument can be made they were the number 1 program in the country of the decade. Now, their win total is inflated because they played in a terrible ACC, and they just dominated. I think they lost 3 conference games the entire decade. But they won 2 national championships. They went to, they went to 3 BCS national championship games and probably at least another 2 or 3 proxy championship games. It's been a long fall for them, and I think the ultimate point here is it's exciting, to see Florida State. I mean, this is a team I used to hate as a child, fear as a child. I mean, I can remember probably the biggest what's a bigger moment in Raleigh sports history? NC State beating Florida State in a regular season game, or the Hurricanes winning a Stanley Cup championship? Which one do you think meant more to people who lived in Raleigh?
Oh, when they tore down that goalpost against Florida State and they carried that thing down Hillsborough Street, it was quite the deal, man, I tell you. But hold on, here's something else you got to look at with Florida State. So Florida State, they've been recruiting well. Even when they were struggling, they were recruiting well. So something finally maybe has clicked. I don't know, the last few years of the Bowden era were kind of ugly, let's be honest. And how that whole thing went down, it was ugly. But I didn't actually think Jimbo Fisher was going to really bring them somewhere, and right now they're sitting at a spot where they are 8 and then 9 in the conference championship game, wins away from being Florida State really is back. Like, let's be honest, if they get the national title and they lose, or if they get there and they somehow win, which let's be honest, I don't think they can beat Alabama, but it'd be awesome to see being from ACC country. Florida State is back. I really think they're back, and it's not hype when it's a month into the season right now. I don't think it is. They've already got the toughest game out of the way.
No, I agree. I think the Clemson win, validates much more than beating Wake Forest and 2 AA teams. But getting to the national championship game is certainly improvement from where Florida State has been the last 5 or 6 years. Playing in the Champ Sports Bowls and the like. But for Florida State to be back, Florida State needs to be competing in national championship games. Not just getting there, but making at least a game of it. This is not a program that, making BCS bids are a big deal. BCS bids are to be expected if Florida State is Florida State. If they are, to be the team that we feared as children, they must, they must beat the best to be the best, as the nature man, Ric Flair would say.
Woo! Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! Woo!
Exactly. And I think that about wraps it up for another edition of the First and Short podcast. I'm the Goose for JJ. Again, if you like what you hear, tell a friend.
And fear the spear, and then click some ads. Make us an income here. Thanks for listening.